Michael Blau, there never was a beginning. We living, thinking, conscious beings are used to a reality of cause and effect. In our attempts to explain the realities we face, we have invented two basic explanations. The first explanation lays the responsibility for existence on a supreme being, God or whatever other name. If such a being exists, there can be no search for its source. That leads to an infinite regression of causes and effects until the original cause is identified. Such a force would have a nature that drove it to create whatever we experience as reality, including ourselves, our identities, and consciousness. A second explanation postulates a condition wherein the elements of existence interact and undergo changes, resulting in the reality we face, including identity and consciousness. Either way, there is, and always was, something intrinsic in reality that exists, and always has existed without prior cause. Obviously, the first explanation is religion, with its system of explanations being called intelligent design, which you must call a belief. The second explanation is some variation of evolution. The difference is small. With evolution, the intelligence is built into the intrinsic elements, ultimately a form of which has always existed, no beginning. Subscribing to this explanation would also be a belief. Can either of these explanations ever be proved? Well, damn, Mike. Nothing like the simple questions to throw my way, right? Okay, can religion be proved? No. Can evolution be proved? Well, yes, we have indicators, markers, and signs of it. It is a thought-out theory, actually a series of theories and hypotheses that have been being worked on for well over a century now. And evolution is a changing model of our understanding of how life develops. It is not necessarily a theory of where life comes from. There is a big difference there. You do have the idea of everything going back to a single-celled organism and all that. Well, we have evidence of these things. We can show how this process works. It's not just a belief in the same way a God belief is. God is God. It's a spiritual entity that has no substance or meaning and has no experience beyond a subjective reality, which basically means it's all in your head. Now, pain is also all in your head, and pain is very, very real. So it's not a matter of just because something exists in your head that it's not real. However, it's not physical. There's no physical manifestation of God or gods. We only have things that we can interpret as physical interpretations of God or gods, and that's interpretation. That's signs reading, that's prophecy, that is reading tea leaves. That's basically believing what you want to believe, what you feel you need to believe, where that's your emotional needs driving your perception to see the world the way you need to see the world in order for it to make sense to you and for it to be something that you can live in. And that's religion. And really, at the end of the day, that's really all religion is all about. I suppose you could say the same things about something like philosophy, but we tend to put a little bit more into the religious side when it comes to belief and investment, especially emotional investment, than we do with things like philosophy, where we're just sort of, pondering ideas or pondering imponderables and bouncing ideas around. Religion has other connotations because there is this more serious, after effect of death that we have to deal with. And we have big questions about, what's going to happen afterwards and all that. Okay, so belief sets, that's religion. Evolution is not that. Evolution has a lot of science behind it, but it is an evolving, Freudian slip there. It is an evolving process, understanding what evolution is all about. There are competing schools. There's genetics, epigenetics. There's all kinds of discoveries and new discoveries and rediscoveries and competing schools of thought in this area. Would we call these things beliefs? No. We call these things interpretations of physical evidence and reality. And this is a big, big difference between the concept of religion as a belief and science as a belief. Science, ultimately, I guess you could say, if you wanted to sort of get away with a semantic victory, you could sort of say that anything we think is a belief, because it's in our head, but that's sloppy thinking, right? Evidence-based thinking is not belief. We do use words to differentiate these two things for a reason. So you have facts versus opinions, evidence versus belief, right? These are two different spheres of activity. Evidence is what drives the belief in science. If you want to insist on using the word belief with science, then we have to then say, okay, fine, we'll give you belief. I'm only doing this for the sake of argument. I wouldn't normally give you belief because I don't think science is about belief. So evidence-based understandings of things point to external reasons outside of your head, right? Physical realities. I have evidence that these cards exist. I don't have evidence that there is a 1990 Ferrari parked right over there. There's nothing there. It's not here. There's no tiger in this room. However, I could tell you that I believe that there's a tiger under this table. I don't see it, but I think it's there. But there's no evidence of it. That's belief or delusion, depending on how far down you want to go on that scale. If I can point to it, if I can point to its markers, if I can point to its phenomena, if I can point to indicators of its existence, then I am talking about evidence. And of course, this has to be real, tangible, physical stuff or measurable realities, right? I can provide evidence. You can believe that you love somebody, for example. You can hold this belief that of love, but I can measure how much love you think you have towards this person. And I can create a scale and I can write it down and I can say, okay, well, let's measure this and compare your feelings in relation to other things you have feelings about. And now we're not getting into, now we're talking about measurements of things. Now we're talking about evidence. Now we're talking about facts. And we can talk about those facts and we can play with those facts and manipulate them and do things with them. Can't really do a whole lot with your beliefs, right? Or your ideas. They just kind of sit there and you're the one who's totally in charge of them. So anyway, I'm kind of going on and on here. But one last thing I wanted to say about this in terms of your premise basically is there never was a beginning, and you wanted my thoughts on this. So let me, can either of these explanations be proved? Well, yeah, we're proving evolution every day. But you also premise this on the reality that we experience, which is called cause and effect. That's how we interpret and experience the universe. It's not necessarily an objective statement of how the universe works. It's just our perception of it. Time is a perception we have. It's a way that we understand how we experience the universe. And it's not necessarily objective reality. And there's a lot of weird, crazy thinking here and a lot of quantum physics, formulas to go diving down and all that when you really want to get into the meat and potatoes of this. But I'm just saying in a general sense, it's just a perception. It's just it's our experience of reality. It's not necessarily true. So when you talk about things having earlier beginnings and earlier beginnings and earlier beginnings, they don't necessarily have earlier beginnings. It is possible that things have always just been here as we understand that concept of time. Or it's possible that there's an earlier beginning, I suppose you could say, or a beginning where things before that, time doesn't have any meaning or understanding or significance in how you would be describing the nature of reality, let's say prior to, let's say, a Big Bang, which we can only suppose or theorize about, right? We have no clocks, we have no cameras, we have no time machine we can send back and look at any of this stuff. It's all theoretical understanding. So it's not solid, nailed down science, but there's a lot of very, very, very good possibilities that we understand what was going on in the universe all the way up to this point of this Big Bang. But given our current understandings of how the universe is put together and the way we perceive it, we have no way of going prior to that moment. But it's possible that before the Big Bang, there was no moment. And let me give you an analogy, I believe from Stephen Hawking, that helps demonstrate this point. we go north on planet Earth, or south, right? All the way to the poles. You can be anywhere on this planet and you can point north, unless you are standing specifically and exactly on the North Pole. At which point, how do you point to more north? How do you go more north than the North Pole? You can't. That's the end. There is no more north to experience. You've hit the top, the peak of the north. That's the beginning of it. And that's the same, it's a similar analogy with time. You can go back to a point where time is beginning, and before that, there is no before that, because it just doesn't, it's not even a term that has applicability to what reality was prior to that moment. So it's just something to screw with your head and think about. Okay, it's just food for thought, but it's always sort of given me this, kind of idea, and I thought I'd share that with you too, since you gave me a rather complicated question. I thought I'd throw that back at you. So let me know what you think, Mike.